Let's say you're at dinner. Maybe it's family, maybe it's old friends, maybe it's someone from high school you ran into and somehow ended up at the same table. At some point, someone asks you what you've been up to, and before you can even answer, everything you said you were going to do this year runs through your head first. The things that you were going to start, the languages, the business, the project, the things you told yourself and maybe told other people was happening, and you realize you haven't done it. You talked about it, you planned it, you thought about everything you needed before you could start. You might even started watching videos about it, getting prepared, getting informed, telling yourself that this is progress, that there's value in being well prepared before you actually begin. And then after dinner, you get home and something clicks. You feel it, that motivated Sunday evening feeling where everything seems possible and you're absolutely going to start tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and it feels completely different. The feeling is gone and you call it procrastination, and it's not exactly wrong, but it's not precise enough to actually help you because you called it procrastination before and it didn't change anything. What's actually happening is the knowing-doing gap. And it's not one thing, it's three completely different problems that look identical from the outside and require completely different solutions. Most people treat them the same way. That's exactly why they stay stuck. And here's what makes it harder to see than it sounds. Your brain's not sabotaging you, it's protecting you. It found a way to make you feel like you're moving forward towards the thing while keeping you at a safe distance from the moment that would actually tell you whether you can do it or not. These are honeypots, ways of feeling better about yourself without actually changing anything about what you're doing. Watching videos about Italian isn't the same as learning Italian. Writing a business plan is not building a business. The brain doesn't really know the difference between them because all of it feels like engagement with the thing, and all of it feels like forward movement, and the brain wants you to be comfortable more than it wants you to be efficient. That distinction matters because comfortable and efficient look the same right up until they don't. The first gap is the information gap. You want to be prepared. You don't want to waste time making mistakes other people have already figured out. You want to know what you're getting into before you get into it, and that's legitimate. There's a real knowledge gap and feeling it makes sense, but at some point something shifts. You start coming across information you've already seen. You're not learning anymore. You're just not starting. And the research that was once filling a genuine gap is now filling a different one. The gap between where you are and the discomfort of attempting. You've told yourself that this is progress even when you're seeking the information for comfort rather than knowledge. And because there is no resistance to it, because it feels productive, the question of when you're actually going to begin quietly stops coming. The information gap doesn't close with more information, it closes with more output. One attempt, no matter how imperfect, generates more useful information about your specific situation than 10 hours of general preparation. Because preparation isn't about the idea of the thing. The attempt is about your actual ability to do it. Those are different questions and only one of them has an actual answer you can use. The second gap is the motivation gap. Maybe you already have all the information. You know exactly what you need to do. You've read the books, you understand the process. The reason you haven't started, you just tell yourself you need the right moment, the right energy, the right motivation. And so you look for motivation, you read about it, you watch videos about people who found motivation. And at some point you realize you've fallen into another circle. Looking for motivation, to find motivation, to do the thing that would give you motivation. The insight here is that motivation is not the prerequisite for action, it's the product of it. You don't wait until you feel like running and then run. You make running so easy that you start before you can even ask the question of whether you feel like it. The gap doesn't close by finding inspiration, it closes by removing friction. Lay out your running shoes the night before, have the document open on your computer before you plan to sit down. Tell yourself you're only working for 5 minutes and let the environment do what willpower couldn't. The goal is to make the first step so small and so accessible that the brain doesn't get a chance to veto it. You're not overcoming the resistance, you're just designing around it. The third gap is the identity gap. It's the deepest one. Maybe you have the information, maybe you remove the friction and it's still not happening. Not because you can't, but because somewhere underneath the knowing and the willing, who you believe you are doesn't include this version of you yet. Think about the person who finally quit smoking. The ones who succeed almost always describe it the same way. They stopped thinking about themselves as a smoker. Not while they were quitting, before. They started identifying as someone who doesn't smoke while they were still smoking. Because they understood that if they kept seeing themselves as a smoker, trying to quit, they would always be the smoker. The behavior didn't change first, the identity shifted, and the behavior followed. This gap is the hardest one to identify because it doesn't feel like an identity gap. It feels like motivation, or a discipline problem, or not the right time problem. But what's actually happening is that every time you try to act in a way that conflicts with how you see yourself, the identity pulls you back to baseline. Not through conscious resistance, it just doesn't feel like you. And things that don't feel like you don't stick. The identity gap doesn't close through willpower or understanding, it closes through evidence. Small accumulated deposits that show who you're trying to be is someone that you actually are. Every time you act in alignment with your identity, you're building towards rather than who you're coming from. The minute you write something down, you're a writer. You take a photo, you're a photographer. You run, you're a runner. You're not aspiring, you're not planning to be. The evidence now exists. You did the thing, and over time, those deposits accumulate until the new identity has enough to support itself without putting in effort. The shift happens when the new behavior starts to feel like staying true to yourself rather than forcing yourself to change. And that's when the gap closes. So how do you actually get from the couch, from doom scrolling, from watching other people do the thing you said you wanted to do, from answering the question of how that thing is going that you were going to do last year, to being the person in the middle of doing it? The first is to understand that choosing not to start is still a choice. Every day you say you're going to do something else instead, you're actively saying that you don't want to be the person that you say you want to be. Not today. That reframe matters because it removes the comfortable neutrality of waiting. There's no waiting, there's only choosing. And find the smallest possible output, not more research, not more preparation, something that you can put in the world that generates real feedback. Speaking one sentence in Italian out loud, sending the first email, posting the first thing, one piece of real feedback from the actual domain is worth more than everything currently in the tabs you have open. Because it's not about the idea anymore, it's about your actual ability, and the only way to find out what that is to test it. Before your brain can talk you out of it, before you can argue with yourself, before the feeling disappears, lay out the running shoes, open the document, give yourself 5 minutes and nothing more, let the environment do the work, and collect the evidence. Everything you do becomes proof of who you are now, not who you're planning to become. That proof is what closes the identity gap. That proof is what makes the next attempt cheaper than the last one. That proof is what eventually makes the behavior far less like discipline and more like being yourself. The hardest part in all of this is auditing, sitting with the list of things you said you were going to do, the ones you talked about, the ones you started and stopped, the ones that have built enough friction from failed attempts, from time passing, from telling the story so many times, that starting again feels more like starting from scratch. What is the thing you know you should be doing, but you just haven't done? And what's the smallest version of it you could do today? Not to finish it, not to be ready, not to have a plan, just to have something real enough that you can call yourself someone who hasn't started anymore. That's the gap, and that's how you close it. I'm Jack. I make content about the mental blind spots most people don't know they have, what they are, why they exist, and what to do about them. And this series is called The Gap. Each episode, I'll take one distance between knowing something and living it, and we'll look at what's actually in the way. And if that's something you want to keep thinking about, stick around.